families hope.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, including, of course, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Really all you need to know. So wherever you can see us, hear us, chime in, participate to the extent that you want to, really, that's the right place for you to be as we continue our, of course, dual missions to have live local talk radio here in the borderland, because damn it, I think we deserve it, but also to talk about the things going on here and beyond. And as much as not looking to die on any hills, if I had to pick one, it's going to be about, of course, talking about the local issues as much as possible. But that is to say that, of course, there's more than this just going on in our region that arguably does have effects here, at the very least in the long term, but also that is going on during the week. And so in deference to what we deal with during the rest of the week, the pressure often on these issues and of coming down, and as much as it may be hard to draw down what's going on with, say, just a couple of things at the top of the head, specific court cases, potential political issues, particularly if they're not immediately in our area, but again, could arguably eventually have an impact here. Friday is the pressure relief valve, and we do keep the Friday, sacrosanct. Close enough anyway. Semi-sacrosanct, as close as we can do so without starting to get to sacrilegious. In any case, it's very important to us, me, and of course a lot out there in the audience, including those already jumping on over on the social media, like dropping those likes and reacts, Jim McCravey, RJ, Robbie Flores, and Monica Cervantes, because Friday is free-for-all Friday, meaning, okay, the gloves are off when it comes to the topic, the subjects, and what we get into. There's already people chiming in again. TGIF, everyone, from Robbie Flores and Marky Mendingo. Good afternoon to you as well, as we continue to have even if it was just El Paso, the entirety of even just El Paso, not the whole borderland region that we usually end up taking on, I'm sure we would still have more than enough, beyond enough. We would still not get to all of it and the most impacting stuff in just the, a couple hours every day, each and every day. But it's certainly not the case with everything else going on across the state, around the country, and beyond the globe. So with all of that in mind, that means that we are taking y'all's comments, calls, everything that we can cram into 2 hours of the show, minus the little intro here, every time. So, free for all Friday. Some being very happy about it and describing it in different ways, but that's what we do, and that's what we will continue to do, so as long as I got the chance to do so. So let's dive right in with it there. Again, more comments coming in with, again, like Edgar Ortiz letting us know that he's on board. So one of the better ways to chime in, and the conversation even takes on tones and tenors that I lose track of as it goes fast and furious. Thunderdome comments is very much been in effect lately, and particularly on Fridays, as we stick with usually, again, the local stuff, even from the stuff I pull from the comments during the week. But let's go ahead and get into it. And of course, those phone lines open if the last one just filled up, actually. So if you're looking to get on, that number to call, of course, will be open throughout the show. Just take your chance. And again, here's the hint: when one call ends, another begins. That number is, of course, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. And yeah, we say that a bunch because this is radio primarily. And of course, for those over on social media, you never have to guess about it. We have it on the top of the screen there for you, and that's one of the reasons I recommend doing the viewing over there, besides the comments. And apparently my facial features and expressions are ever so slightly occasionally a draw. Some comment on it anyway. In any case, let's dive right into it here, as we got a whole lot of stuff going on. Just a couple of things, actually a bunch of want to mention one thing locally here, a bunch of political visits happening in and around and right in our area, actually, as we've been going through today, including one of the people hoping to challenge Texas Republican Senator and incumbent Ted Cruz of, I believe it's Colin Allred, making his visit on his listening tour to our area. So We'll see how that works out. He's got some choice words for him. Of course, he's got a primary to go through with one of the sitting congressmen for, I believe, the San Antonio area as well. So that's an interesting one. Of course, we also had that cabinet level visit from the Small Business Administration administrator. So, yeah, that's another one that's been going on in our area. So, certainly a lot of focus and things happening right in our area. But in the meantime, we got plenty more, and I'm sure we got our own blind spots, etc. So, let's just dive right into it. We also have Angel Rueda with a happy Friday and the rock on. Do appreciate it. Let's dive right in. We do have Ben on the east side here with us right now. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. This is a question I have for Raul. Raul says that the economy is really doing well. But is it really doing well for the average American? Biden says that there have been an extraordinary number of new jobs created under Bidenomics. But this number is a number taken from the payroll survey, which counts the number of all employees that an employer has on their employee rolls. So if somebody is hired for a job, that counts as one more job. Another survey, which is taken, is the household survey that counts the actual number of people in a household that are employed. So let's say you have a household of 4 people. 2 are employed, 2 are not. So maybe a husband and a wife are employed full time, but the 2 kids are currently unemployed. Or next month, because someone has to earn extra money to make payment on their monthly bills, the wife takes on an extra job, and that is reported on the establishment survey. Now there's 3 jobs for her, okay? But there are still 2 jobs reported on or 3 jobs for the household, but there are still 2 jobs reported on the household survey. The number that the Biden administration is reporting is from the payroll survey. Back in October of last year, there were 7.6 million Americans working 2 or more jobs. That number now is more than 16 million. When Biden took office, that number was 2.3 million.
Yeah, the whole underemployment and just wages. I mean, there's the whole question, and of course, the kids you're talking about there, if they're below the age or whatever. I know it's been changing in some states lately, but still in Texas, I think the minimum age is 14 for certain like family or like farm service and like family connected jobs. That like usually I do believe directly involve like the parents being involved with it. I do think that there's like a minimum age of 16 for some, depending on it. And of course, you throw emancipation in there and it gets all kind of wonking. But
they're teenagers, yeah.
Okay, so they might be in there, but a lot of those end up being, I mean, the workforce is not every person, every individual that resides in the United States. Of course, it's those considered, again, that workforce calculation. And that's still, I still have some questions about that I have not been able to find totally satisfying to me answers about the people, particularly the portion of it that may have dropped out of the workforce and development there, but a little bit separate from what you're talking about here. That's just one of those ongoing things for me. But yeah, the underemployment and the whole wage conversation definitely still continues on apace with all of this, because if you can't get enough job, you got to get more job, right? Even if it's not in the same place. And again, Texas doesn't have like those, I do believe anyway. I don't think New Mexico does either. Those 0-hour jobs or those concepts where you could be on call, and if you're not able to be available during hours, even if you're not actually working them, you could be considered fired or fired for cause based on that. Not aware of those existing here, though. Then again, I haven't gone for a general service industry job. This is also coming in the comments here for a minute, but yeah, there are other ways. I mean, the way you slice the statistics is very important indeed.
Yeah, and Biden administration is actually telling us a story, but not the story. One other thing, he keeps touting how well the market is doing. It's up 16.8% in the last year. But how many bankruptcies have occurred this last year? Filings jumped 68% in the first half of 2023. Bankruptcy filings, U.S. Chapter 11 bankruptcy filings jumped 68% in the first half of 2023. So is the average American actually doing well? The market represents the larger companies, Amazon,
Sure.
All the big companies and everything. They're doing quite well because they're being propped up by the Biden administration. But a lot of the people down below that are either trying to start trying to start their businesses or
Sure.
have had fines that they're having a lot of problems with keeping up to keep their employment. God, I'm sorry.
No, but I get what you're saying, that the whole economic situation you have questions about. Understood.
Yeah. But anyway, what it amounts to is, and I got all confused again. I apologize. This is bumbling Ben, but basically it is a matter that the bankruptcies are way up, and that represents the average individual out there, not the big companies.
No, and I get what you're saying there. I've been looking so much at the bankruptcy numbers, but of course it's been coming up in recent news there, and including from this Federal Reserve Bank of New York, their one out of August 8th, total household debt reaches $17.06 trillion in the second quarter of this year, with credit card debt specifically exceeding $1 trillion. And they do have a nice chart if you check over there, particularly on their Center for Economic Data, on the total debt balance, showing that it's been still on the upward trend. You could call it maybe leveling out a little bit ever since the trends from it was still pretty well on a trend, even since you kind of point toward it since 2013. Looking at their charts, it's been on a pretty significant, regular increase. Got a little bit sharper since, first quarter of 2020, but you could be calling getting down a little bit, but it's still up there. So there are still definitely issues out there. And if people are doing well in this economy, more power to them. Hope it continues to work out well for them. Though I do think others, and one very particular one, and a part of the reason I do believe for this whole tour, that is part of where these numbers and focus is on. Releases out from whitehouse.gov, where they're saying Bidenomics is working, and yet it's not totally translating into numbers for the president. He's still looking at I like the 538 polls because it's a good longitudinal overview, and they have him at a disapprove about 55% and approval 40%. So I still think a lot of people are not totally buying it, at the very least on this, because what's the usual phrase? It's the economy, stupid. And if that is working well, or working for most people anyway, that tends to leave a lot of people maybe not happy, but not mad, often suffices in this current economic and political climate, frankly.
Well, I appreciate the time and everything. It is a matter that my dogs were starting to do something that I didn't want them to do, and
Fair enough.
Got tracked off. But anyway, stay well, stay safe. God bless. Let's go, Brandon. And I think those two things, ask Raul about them.
Yeah, fair enough here. We'll put the question out there, see who bites on it. So appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we'll go ahead and take that first break of this hour right now. Hey, Friday's the day when we get into all this stuff as much as we can anyway, cram it in. So let's go ahead and get into that next break, and then back to the phone lines and the other comments. We got some that we've been popping up, but we'll mention more of them directly here after this next break. You're, of course, tuned in to Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot more coming up for you. Just getting into the start of the show, and we got the rest of these couple hours to go here. So I am sure we'll getting into a lot more of those comments as well. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break. Okay, that one line just filled up before we even got to the phone number, but keep it handy. 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere. It's Friday, y'all.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A crash on southbound Loop 375 at Alameda in the clearing stages. The exit ramp partially blocked. 4 vehicles involved. An injury accident reported Gateway West at Lee Trevino. Stop and go traffic on the I-10 westbound in the Upper Valley from Mesa up to Trans Mountain. It's a 25-minute delay. 15-minute delays I-10 eastbound from Vinton to Artcraft. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's Late Night. Open until midnight or later. Wendy's is open until midnight or later. which means all your favorite menu items are up later too. The Baconator still tastes just as juicy and bacony at night. So listen to that craving and turn in for the night at a Wendy's drive-thru. Hours may vary at participating U.S. Wendy's.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same, but is 95% cheaper? And you can get it online? Just go to 4hims.com/radio. Through Hims, you'll get a free medical consultation, discreet shipping if prescribed, a 100% online process, and trusted generic alternatives to the name brands at up to 95% off. That's right. Get generic for Viagra, the same active ingredient as brand name Viagra, but for 95% less. It's the same medication, still prescribed by a licensed medical provider, but with zero copay, no expensive appointments, and no awkward face-to-face conversations. To start your free online visit, you need to go to this exclusive address, 4hims.com/radio. That's 4hims.com/radio for your free online visit. FORHIMS.com/RADIO.
Are you a business owner, CEO, or responsible for marketing? If you are, iHeartMedia can help you reach your goals and find new customers. We reach more consumers in your target area than anyone else. And we can give you access to those potential customers more cost-effectively across radio, digital, podcasting, and social. We'd love to show you how iHeartMedia can work for you. From your cell, dial #250 and say keyword great results. That's #250 and say great results.
At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. Introducing 24/7 LifeGuard protection, only from SimpliSafe Home Security. Now, monitoring agents can see and speak to intruders through our new indoor camera to help stop crime in real time and for fast police response. Get 20% off any new system with Fast Protect monitoring at simplisafe.com/radio. Advanced home security, 24/7 professional monitoring for less than $1 a day. There's no safe like SimpliSafe.
Teens in foster care will love you, even if you don't know the lingo.
Dad bod, noun. The result of the occasional donut, always washed down with confidence.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council. Visit adoptuskids.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in just about any way that you can, whatever works for you, really, either on the, again, various, both the terrestrial ways, radio. If you're in your car right now, keep your eyes on that road. We'll keep talking about the things that are important while you can, if you are able to do so through the electronic means, be it through, again, either ktsmradio.com, the iHeartRadio app, in which you can actually get updates from it there. So if you got the chance, you got the smart device, you got the signal to do so reliably, definitely recommend that you download that, because it's a good way to get out of some whatever device. You can put it on a whole lot of different ways these days. More useful, I would argue, but hey, I know what works, so don't break what ain't needing to be broken. In any case, you can also, of course, get us on the social media. A lot of people tuning in, chiming in over there, including those likes and reacts being dropped primarily on the Facebook page. Sure, I know how it goes, and not everyone's on there, but we do have Edgar Ortiz, James Holmes, Ted Kors, Marky Mendango, James Radcliffe, Jim McCravey, RJ, Robbie Flores, and Monica Cervantes, and some more comments coming in over there as well. Marky Mendango specifically saying service jobs when it comes to the employment changes, not wealth creating jobs, not house buying jobs, not even a used Subaru buying job. Okay, I had a call, I don't remember what show I was watching the other day, but about something on getting a $600 car used. Like, sure, it was a beater in it. I'm still not going to place that one. I think it was in a waiting room. I wasn't half paying attention, but that caught my ear for a second. And just thinking about that as I bet you still could, but if it's not going to be something that's going to treat you like, a used Pinto is, I'm not sure it's actually going to be there. Other comments coming in, including Dan Hoderator agreeing with the previous caller, and RJ also saying Bidenomics my last huevo. Listen, there's a certain amount of certainty you have to have when you're going to give sure, it's a more pithy label, Bidenomics, than it is the President Biden economic plan. Like, I get the branding and the aspects of it, but you better be 100% sure that you're going to be, that this is going to be the right thing and a good thing and something that you can really get people behind as well. Otherwise, you're just given, also, I got to say, particularly with the branding aspect, someone else to just take those quick pot shots at you. Like, I mean, whether you liked it or not, Reaganomics both was a pithy line in its own way, but also easier to take pot shots at. Let's just be honest with that. Other comments coming in. We'll keep those going throughout both hours here. But of course, those phone lines open now. Line is available after we had a comment come in off air. But of course, that number to call if you're wanting to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM is the number to call. So let's jump right back into it. We do have Raul in the Northeast on the line with us here right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Well, to answer bumbling Ben there,
sure.
Back when Trump was MOTUS, you've heard of POTUS. This is MOTUS, moron of the United States.
Sure.
He and the Republicans, when they shut down the government, that's when the Federal Reserve did that study that found 60% of Americans cannot come up with $1,000 without having to sell something or borrow their money. Okay. Now, Trump didn't change that. He had 4 years to change that, to make America great, and he didn't do that. And he didn't eliminate systemic, endemic poverty in the United States. There's nothing new about it. It's been around for a long, long time. It was more in the past, and it's maybe less now. And then sometimes it goes up when we have recessions or depressions or global pandemics and stuff like that, that nobody plans on. But it's there,
sure.
Hasn't gone away. And the ones who suffer the most disproportionately are people of color and kids. Now, as to most Americans have very little savings and a lot of debt. And that's the way it is. And that's the way it's been for, again, a long, long time. And what's really sad is that most Americans are one serious injury,
sure.
accident, or illness away from bankruptcy, And one reason that is because the plutocrats and the Republicans, they don't want to give people or provide us through our taxes national health insurance. So we don't have to worry about that. Like most of the other citizens of the developed nations of the West, No, we got to have the system that the insurance industry wants that makes them fabulously wealthy and results in us having to see all these stupid commercials all day long about, do you have this or that? And if you do, you better go ask your doctor about it. But don't forget that it might cause you a heart attack or a stroke or so forth. They don't do that anywhere else in the world. And guess who pays for all those commercials, Guess who pays for that? Now, as far as companies going broke, there's nothing new about that. Happens all the time. Hey, that's business, Ben, okay? And as far as the S&P 500, the return is what it is. And that's what I've been talking about, those folks who get to participate in that. Well, I gave you the numbers, over the long run, 10%, and the market's doing very well. And all the other economic metrics today are better than they were when Biden inherited Trump's disaster. Okay. Now about Steve, this week he called in recently to say that Democrats believe that Democrats is destiny. Now I'll tell you what, Democrats know that demographics is destiny.
Demographics.
And
okay.
They know that. And they know that because a political scientist has found that is to be the case, that one's race heavily influences voting behavior. Like most blacks and Hispanics vote for Democrats, just like most white Southerners vote for Republicans, So it turns out that also zip codes reveal political affiliations, if you study it now. Now,
sure.
one other thing, Marco for mayor, he's got all kinds of grand plans for El Paso and ways that he'd like to spend taxpayers' money. Now, I'd rather have Beto for mayor than Marco for mayor, that's for sure. And Beto has a business, or had a business in downtown El Paso named Stanton Street. In fact, I made phone calls there during the Obama's first run for presidency, but then I voted for Green on the second run. because my vote wasn't going to matter in a winner-take-all state like Texas, which is something that really, really sucks. You know, that whole idea there. We really should have more democratic and more representative proportional system so everyone's vote counts. So that, let's say 40% of the voters chose candidate X, well, 40% of the electors would be awarded to that candidate. That'd be a whole lot better than, this other system where immediately almost half of the people are disenfranchised and unhappy with what went down. We should also get rid of the undemocratic, unrepresentative, anachronistic remnant of slavery, the Electoral College, which has and can result in minority rule when the presidency is won by the loser of the popular vote. That's not a good thing for a country. It's divisive from the get-go, and it's, like I say, a remnant of slavery. Anyway, back to Marco's plans to revitalize downtown El Paso.
Sure.
I have a friend who owns an empty building across the street from the Popular. But anyway, Marco is going to do for downtown El Paso what El Paso's self-made billionaire Paul Foster and multimillionaire Woody Hunt and the Schwartz and other owners of downtown buildings haven't been able to do. You know, in fact, some people think they ought to call downtown El Paso Fosterville. And when I ran for city council, I ran on a platform of democratizing our city government, trying to make it more responsive to community needs. And here's one of the planks on my platform that Marco should consider: holding every other city council meeting on a weekday, evening, or a weekend when more people can attend and probably would attend, like the school district boards do it. And to moderate the grand visions of the power mongers and their plutocrat funders, I propose the creation of a research institute constituted with people from UTEP, community college, the high school seniors, faculty, and they would survey the community using the mails, using the internet, and we had to, last but not least, door-to-door canvassing to find out what the community wants, find out what their gripes are, find out what their spending priorities are, and build that database so that the politicians would have something to decide to look at, rather than what the reality is they talk to the few special interest people that show up to their office and the people who give them money. That's how it actually works in reality.
Sure.
So that's how I would do. That's what I would do.
I mean, it's an interesting concept here. I mean, the logistics aside, again, I feel like it's not exactly magic wand territory, though it's a great idea. The implementation of it, as often is the issue with just about any level of nonprofit organization, anything else I've been involved with here in town, is always going to be getting people doing it and dedicated to it. It might take, arguably enough, one of those, if you're not going to call them plutocrat when you're trying to go for their money, ask them one of the well-connected individuals who can maybe endow a foundation, something like that. I don't know. That's beyond my pay grade or worth investigating. But it's to the idea of actually having more city council available. I think that would be great. But given the fact that some of these city council meetings can take all day as it is, every person who has had to cover city council, particularly for a daytime deadline, is cursing your name right now. I'm sure I would have in a former life. Maybe not the most important thing, but I will say that the representation before city council, I know that some people, or really any of the bodies of local government, including the school boards, frankly, I think a lot of people may think that they ignore us. They don't care. But I continue to argue that it's not like this, mustache twiddling, a snidely whiplash kind of thing of, we're going to do whatever we want and ignore the people. It's that most people don't pay attention. And that's why, and I actually haven't harped on this that much lately, so I think we're due. The voting turnout is that I think most, and I guess it's which cart is before which horse is kind of the argument there, at the very least locally, about, okay, is it that politicians don't care, therefore, or seem like they don't care about the average person, therefore the average person doesn't, or is it that the average person, and I do mean beyond, the vast majority of people in El Paso seem not to care about what their politicians do, therefore they don't have that end up being built in. There's arguments both way on this. And either origin point, it's probably a self-reinforcing cycle, to be perfectly honest with you, because since most people don't vote, they focus on those that are going to go out and vote, get them in place, and have the money to end up supporting them on there. Grassroots, just at the very least, politically speaking, doesn't seem to do that much in El Paso, or at the very least, like widespread. Because, like, sure, you may have a grassroots effort, because, I mean, I've argued that you could get just about any political party you wanted to, and sure, it can't run under the political party, but that type of infrastructure installed in, like, any one city council district in town, and get, like, 5,000 people reliably out and voting, and you could control that city council seat basically forever. Now, or might almost want to see that happen because of the shakeups, and as an argument of, rising tide rises all ships, and that if someone is turning out, then more people are like, oh, wait, I guess I got to do something. But still, it's not a great situation, because we have a lot of apathy here in town. And I think dealing with that would go quite a long, far way, even if the idea of having, readily available statistics on what people actually want to see. I'm aware of in other countries, I think Australia actually randomly has a couple of what they call direct democracy parties. They do things very differently there in a whole lot of ways, including ranked choice voting, which I know has been attempted in some U.S. areas. I think at least one state has considered it, but otherwise it's been primarily like a local, municipal, or county type effort thing. But they have a couple there where it's all they're doing when you select their party is you're choosing the person that will then, based on the online polls that are then maintained by those parties, end up putting it in. James Radcliffe saying Alaska as one of those potentially, or was that supposed to be Arkansas? I'll let you clarify there. In any case, point is that there are those that are putting that forth even in a representative system, and there's maybe arguments that the technology that exists these days, considering that you don't have to go out and you'll be ready on the phone to answer a poll, but that you could be just on your cell phone and answering those kind of things, and more towards a true democracy. Maybe. I don't know. John Browston saying Maine is one of those one that has. That sounds about right. I haven't looked at it in a minute. But in any case, to one of your points, there's more than I think I've lost track of here. But the idea of specifically the Electoral College, it's kind of like, well, many of the other things we talk about when it comes to elections, including term limits, that it's an outside looking in kind of thing, isn't it? It ends up coming to that those that hold the power got into power through that system. Therefore, anyone who is in power, it's not really in their interest. Now, is it for them to get rid of it? So feasibly speaking, I think the only way that the Electoral College or any of these things, including the whole first past the post voting system you're talking about, the 50% plus one gets you the win, which is the circumstance. I mean, sure, the Electoral College is one thing, and it does have its proclivities and its idiosyncrasies when it comes to that. Yeah, there's can technically be a minority of the popular vote end up winning overall. But I mean, that is the system the way it exists. You want to change it. But you can choose the game you're going to play, but you have to play by the rules of that game. Point is that there's not really an impetus for those in power to change it. So if you want to see it, I think it's going to take another avenue entirely, maybe through a constitutional amendment. That's about the only reasonable possible, and not calling it terrifically likely in that circumstance either way of that being achieved, but I've been known to be wrong and have been certainly surprised in the past. So maybe not stranger things, different, weirder things maybe have happened, but we'll see. I'm not going to hold my breath on that one in the meantime. In any case, let's go ahead and take that next break right now. Appreciate the point in the call, but we'll go ahead and head back to those phone lines here after this next break. So again, if you're wanting to get on the line, there's a lot more comments are continuing to go by. That number, of course, to do so is 915-544-5876. Available now, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Fidel Moreno Mesa with your CBS 4 News Update. Daniela Courtney Woodworth was 41 years old when she died. Her family laid her to rest on August 3rd and are now speaking out in hopes of seeking justice. El Paso police are now investigating a case that happened in June as a murder after Woodworth was found with serious injuries at a home in Northeast El Paso. Woodworth's family told CBS 4 they know who killed her and said Woodworth told them that she was in an abusive relationship. Her family said that she was in an on-again and off-again relationship with the man the family says is responsible for her death. And while she made these claims, she never reported reported it to police or filed for a restraining order. If you have any tips that may be helpful in this case, you're asked to call El Paso Police or Crime Stoppers of El Paso.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
A crash on the I-10 westbound of the 54 Patriot Alamogordo exit is partially blocking the exit ramp and causing a backup to Reynolds. A crash reported Edgemere eastbound at Zaragoza. Injury accident partially blocking the exit ramp southbound on the loop at Alameda in the lower valley. And stop-and-go traffic, I-10 westbound, 11-minute delays from Mesa up to Trans Mountain. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. The good news is not as hot as we go into and through the weekend. Part of the result of rain chances going up, about a 20% chance of storms for your Friday. Breezy high around 100 degrees. As we look ahead to your weekend, 30% chance of storms for your Saturday. Some of those could contain heavy rainfall, high 97. 98 for a high on your Sunday with a 30% chance of storms again. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Staples has what you need for travel. Passport photos, luggage, headphones, even personal travel-sized items. Now get $10 off your purchase of 30 or more when you buy a travel service. In-store only offer ends September 16th. Exclusions apply. Staples, your first stop to nonstop travel.
If you're hiring, it can feel like you're trying to find a needle in a haystack. You can hope the right person comes along, or you can just use ZipRecruiter. And now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. In fact, ZipRecruiter has helped a lot of business owners find their needle in a haystack, like Marco, president of operations at Telly Tires and Auto Centers. Because Telly Tires has grown a lot in the last few years, Marco needed to hire everyone from a receptionist to a store manager to a head mechanic.
ZipRecruiter helps me find all the right people, even the most difficult jobs to fill. ZipRecruiter helps me keep my business running.
Take it from Marco and millions of other businesses who've used ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter can help you find the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/RADIO. ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso, weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM, brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and let's talk El Paso.
Staples has great prices on everything you need for back to school. Right now, a 24-pack of Crayola crayons and marble comp books are just 50 cents each. Pricing may vary in-store and online. NC26, comp books in-store only. School on, save on at Staples. This report is sponsored by Staples Stores.
City streets or small towns, everyone deserves a clean, green community. We are Keep America Beautiful, the nonprofit working to end littering, improve recycling, and beautify communities. Let's do beautiful things. Visit KAB.org.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in just about any way that works for you, really, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. And since it's Friday, you know we're already in those phone calls if you've been paying any level of attention. Or if you're just joining us, hey, welcome. Phone number 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM, with lines available right now, so give it a shot. I'd love to hear from you. But if you've never called in before, I know I'd make that occasional invitation, reason for you to try. I don't know the right way to put it, but in any case, if you want to do so, I mean, we do have some people that maybe frequent flyers, but it's more of a tenacity issue than just about anything else. No, there's no secret line to call in on to get on for the general calls the way we put it out there. So, hey, it's those willing to put in the time and the waiting on the line, which I do appreciate personally. But in case, let's dive right back into those here, along with some more of the comments, including about coming into the first past the post election, I guess, James Ratcliffe talking about how Murkowski gets in as a senator so many times, totally rigged game, calling it, I guess, not happy about that. And Chris Eckert with some commentary for the previous caller about maybe not being so condescending, at least someone might listen otherwise. I mean, there's ways to go about convincing people in my mind. That's totally the goal here. But talking about the things and having the conversation in the community, I do certainly find is important there. And did I refer to Murkowski as, I think I just read what you said, but yeah, Senator Lisa Murkowski, right? If I'm not mistaken on that one there, with James Ratcliffe talking about that as well. But in any case, a lot of other opinions and things going on there. Definitely a bit of a Thunderdome of comment where even people who might otherwise agree, finding reasons to go further into it. But also KF Green saying, I guess, that Raul didn't hear the VP speech where she said that most Americans were less than $400 away from filing bankruptcy. How does he feel about that? And that was one of the finer points, I guess, that brings it up to mind from the previous caller. Well, previous caller to the most recent one. Not trying to dig through the archives here or anything, but that I think he was talking about personal bankruptcies, if I'm not mistaken, as opposed to business ones, though neither is great. And even when you get to some of those top level, some of those bank issues, probably at least a little bit of some of the reason. I know it comes up in commercials and other ways, but I can also see people being a little bit of a, wait, what's going on with the what now that I trust with literally all of my financial resources? Yeah, that kind of thing. Eggs in one basket comes to mind here. But anyways, let's go back to those phone lines now. Again, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Eric on the east side here with us right now. Eric, thanks for joining us.
Hello there. Trump's attempt to steal the 2020 election was one of the biggest attacks on our Constitution and democracy in American history. And that culminated in a mass right-wing terrorist attack on the Capitol designed to stop the count of the state electors so they could be replaced by fake ones Trump and the Republican Party manufactured. These right-wing terrorists who attacked the Capitol were motivated by the election fraud lies told by Trump, Fox News, and those on the station. The grand jury indictment of Trump's attempt to steal the 2020 election shows the dates and times of when the Republican courts, election officials, and Trump's own investigators informed him that his election fraud claims were false. Trump knew all of his claims he was making to steal the election were false, and the most damning were the ones he told during the phone call to Republican Georgia election officials to steal the election. We can listen to the full phone call of Trump committing one of the biggest crimes against the country in American history. We can literally hear him try to steal an election ourselves, but conservatives and their information sources still aggressively defend him, putting party ahead of country in the Constitution. And, conservatives just pretend this phone call in Georgia doesn't exist, and their information sources do everything in their power to keep them ignorant of it. Just like how these right-wing information sources do everything in their power to keep their followers ignorant of the sworn testimonies of Trump's inner circle and the evidence presented during the January 6 hearings as part of their bipartisan investigation. And in the past, you communicated that you didn't know Trump and the Republican Party's state elector plot to steal the election was part of this bipartisan investigation and presented to the public during the January 6 hearings.
Not so, my dude. I was okay, we keep going at this low loggerheads moment. So I got a definitive question for you here. When it comes to the January 6 hearings versus now the court cases, again, I think it was what the updated special prosecutor status being given there was one of the news updates at the top of the hour right now. So, okay, let me ask you this question. It isn't intended as a question. So if you wanted penalties to come out of this, wouldn't it have made a little bit more sense in the long run to maybe have started with that? And therefore, if the outcome that you're calling for here and wanting to see that starting with this part, because the penalties that, well, obviously what came out of the January 6 hearings were essentially nothing for, well, the former president himself, the one you're talking about here. I mean, sure, there were other investigations, other things also, I mean, certainly influenced by, but separate from the congressional testimony that happened there. So I'm just saying that if this is what you wanted, wouldn't it have made more sense to start with this process as opposed to the congressional hearings?
Absolutely not. because you can't discuss, the legal investigations, the FBI and the DOJ. They can't discuss it publicly. And Trump's election fraud lies were causing terrorism and destroying our democracy every single day that they weren't refuted. So these public hearings that you poison the well of, and right-wing media tries to denigrate and say, oh, they're just political. And like last week, you said, you promoted this false narrative that Adam Kinzinger and Elizabeth Cheney were part of this Democratic plot to elect Democrats in 2020. That's what these hearings were. Like you said, let's just
not 2020, the midterm election, if anything. But okay, let's back up here because it's calling it a plot. Okay, try to leave the grandiose language aside for a minute. Let's talk reality here for just a second. In any case, because it did seem like, particularly in the lead up to it, and then as it was looking increasingly like that the 2022 election, the midterm wasn't totally going to go in Democrats' favor. It did seem like, well, there was an acceleration of that schedule. There wasn't you there. So I'm not saying it was the primary purpose, but at the least someone, and I do think the DNC at least had a thought in the back of their head that a little bit of, well, we'll put this forth and this will influence and, change some of the narratives going on. So I'm not calling it a plot. I'm saying that it was very much a public relations effort. Okay, what happens in congressional hearings? They can result in, further legislation potentially, though this one, I guess maybe not as directly, and certainly the direct penalties that can happen are things like contempt of Congress, which I want to say it wasn't Boehner. No, not Boehner. Bannon. There we go. Why did we come Boehner come? I came up earlier this week, but that Bannon I think ended up being subject to. But in terms of penalties, those are basically the only ones within the wheelhouse of Congress, right? So if you're wanting for accountability, I mean, if you want to just be it to be countered, that's one thing. And sure, I guess there's a little effect that you could be arguing from that way. But again, the question that I was getting at here is that if you want there to be penalties outside of just the public sphere for the president, there were basically none really available through the congressional testimony, right?
Yeah, I had explained that the January 6th investigation did all the hard legwork that's now being used by the DOJ in this grand jury to indict Trump. These sworn testimonies under oath, they are all being used in this grand jury to hold Trump accountable. So every right-wing talking point you use to denigrate these hearings and to promote Trump's election.
Okay, dude, I'm going to give you the advice I often do you to take your ego out of it. I'm not here to say, like, we're wrong, I'm going to prove it any way you can. Like, that seems to be the way you come about these things, and that's not the case. It certainly comes across that way, so maybe think about that. But this is not intended to, I mean, when I talk about, like, impeachment and other ways, those are political proceedings. They are not courts. It is not part of the judicial system. It is through, again, the legislative branch of the government. So they do not have the power to impose those penalties. Like, you have to recognize that, right? That is not within their power. And therefore, if that was the outcome you want, I just got to say, like, it seems like cart before the horse kind of thing, because I mean, if you just wanted to deal with the whole public sphere kind of thing, like, sure, again, there's certainly an argument to be made there. But when we start talking about the, made for TV nature, that particularly the last part of the, producer again, I forget that one exactly here. But I mean, if you're wanting to talk about like the public sphere, like in the public mind, like, sure, that was a part of it, but the penalties part, that was not a part of the congressional proceedings. I get you're arguing that you're saying that it laid the groundwork for him here, but I mean, it wasn't exactly okay, we handed them the paperwork and then they filed the charges type of process here, right?
That's based that the investigative process of the DOJ was expedited tremendously by the January 6th investigation, doing all these sworn testimonies, hundreds of Trump's inner circle that proved that he knew that his election fraud lies were false, and that he still told them anyway to steal the election. And again, these lies cause terrorism. They destroy the very fabric of our democracy every single day that they're not refuted. And so right-wing media is denigrating these January 6th hearings to hide these facts, to hide the fact that Trump tried to steal the election, is them promoting these election fraud lies and the terrorism they cause.
So, okay, here's, I guess, the major then legal question boiling down to it, saying that the January 6th hearings are what led directly to, and I'm sure that, yeah, some of the evidence presented and the things coming out of it were then, of course, I mean, they even talked about it at the time, at the end of the January 6th series of hearings, going to and being presented to the DOJ, and part of that here. And yet, the parts that are notably missing from the actual indictment, the grand jury proceedings, are those things about, well, specifically, but you have often used the phrase of, treason and or terrorism, or and actually any part of like planning, as you often say, of January 6th itself. Certainly allegations about benefiting from it and those kind of things, but the indictment specifically notes, to my understanding, and from what I've read from them as well, that there is not about saying that, Donald Trump had the right to say whatever he can. And that's still one of the big questions, even as we're progressing through this, is about, freedom of speech, those aspects of it. And so that's kind of what I think is being weighed, particularly by any of the judges involved in this, as I'm sure there will be more before too long, as there might be further escalations about there being the, gag orders being considered, the non-tampering of witnesses, which I don't think I'd ever imagine myself ending up as counsel for any current or former head of state, but I'm sure that there is someone who was representing the current president saying, I wish you would say nothing, and knowing that's not going to be the case, because that's what every lawyer always tells their clients is like, don't say anything, let's deal with it in the courtroom. And yeah, I don't expect that to be the case here. So that's notably absent from the indictment is what I'm coming at here. But I tell you what, we got to take that next break right now. We are out of time here practically for this hour. So appreciate the point in the call and some of the discussion here. But again, I'm just going to counsel you, not as a official person or anything, but this is an idea that if you want to discuss these ideas and what you find is important, take the ego out of it. Because if you're noticing there are differences in temperament here, I don't take that down to only the way that we think, but more of hey, what does it mean if someone disagrees with you? Do you take that as a personal attack or not? Because as much as you do personally attack me greatly, yeah, not quite having the effect that it seems like you have. And I don't think I haven't noticed you also talking about best friends or besties that I have in the comments here. If you want to figure out the difference in the way I deal with people, it's how they treat me. So if you're going to come at me, know that you're going to get a little bit more clinical type of treatment than it is going to be otherwise. But in any case, let's take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we've passed the top of the hour, but we'll get to more of the phone calls, more of the comments, more of just about everything we do in the second hour of the program. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break. Again, that number to call. Okay, maybe just filled up there again, but keep it handy. 915-544-5876. 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A crash on I-10 westbound at the Chelsea on-ramp is partially blocking that entrance ramp. I-10 westbound at the Patriot, an earlier minor crash is causing some congestion with a backup to Reynolds. Stop-and-go traffic I-10 westbound from Mesa up to Trans Mountain. It's a 13-minute delay. Also, a recent crash on North Desert at Trans Mountain is in the clearing stage. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Napa Auto Parts. When your ride fires on all cylinders, so do you. That's why Napa is on a mission to keep you in motion. With nearly 6,000 Napa Auto Parts stores and over 17,000 Napa Auto Care centers, the Napa network has everything you need to get up and go.
Are you a business owner, CEO, or responsible for marketing? If you are, iHeartMedia can help you reach your goals and find new customers. We reach more consumers in your target area than anyone else, and we can give you access to those potential customers more cost-effectively across radio, digital, podcasting, and social. We'd love to show you how iHeartMedia can work for you. Get started today at iHeartAdvertising.com. That's iHeartAdvertising.com.
Hi, I'm Burt Ward, Robin from TV's Batman, inviting you to feed your dog natural, non-GMO, Gentle Giants dog and puppy food. Dogs eating Gentle Giants and following our special feeding and care program are living as long as 27 healthy, active years with a wonderful quality of life. Holy wow, 27 years! Think of all the extra years you could enjoy with your dog at Target, H-E-B, and stores near you. Try Gentle Giants cat and kitten food, too.
What's holding you back from learning the language you've always wanted to know?
Too hard.
Takes too long. Not with Babbel. Babbel's lessons take just 15 minutes a day.
15 minutes isn't long.
Nope. And they're fun.
Fun isn't hard.
Right. Babbel's interactive lessons, podcasts, games, and more make it fun and engaging, so you don't realize you're learning a language, but you are. And Babbel's lessons are built around real life. You can choose from topics like travel, business, relationships, and more. You'll learn what matters most to you. Plus, Babbel's lessons are designed to get you speaking right away. In 3 weeks, you're able to start having conversations.
Just 3 weeks? Even better.
Since Babbel's lessons are designed by language experts and voiced by real native speakers, you'll get the accents just right and be able to carry on conversations with confidence.
Learning a language with Babbel doesn't take long.
And with Babbel, it isn't hard.
It's perfect.
And now, try Babbel free at Babbel.com. That's Babbel.com. Babbel.com.
Keep your family and livelihood safe with Mazer Security Alarms. Systems start at under $35 per month. No job is too small or too large. For your free quote or to upgrade your existing system, call Mazer Security Alarms at 915-590-0033.
Warning. If you are 60 or older, RSV can be a dangerous respiratory virus. Not all dangers come with warning labels. Talk to your pharmacist or doctor about getting vaccinated against RSV today. Learn more at bewareofrsv.com. This message is brought to you by Pfizer.
News on the hour
Radio
and the
Music
half.
Festival
Traffic
is
and
coming
weather
back
all
to
day.
T-Mobile
News
Arena
Radio
in Las Vegas
690
this
is
September.
KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeartRadio station.
Buy tickets now at AXS.com. NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. The U.S. attorney leading the investigation into Hunter Biden is being elevated to special counsel. Attorney General Merrick Garland today said Delaware U.S. Attorney David Weiss requested special counsel status this week as the investigation continues. Calls for a special counsel grew after a plea agreement between Biden and federal prosecutors fell apart in court. Hawaiian officials expect the death toll to keep rising as rescue efforts continue in Maui, where the resort town of Lahaina has been nearly destroyed by a brush fire. Lahaina resident Keith Hunter still can't believe what happened.
I've never seen something ravaged so fast.
Governor Josh Green says the fire has left thousands homeless and destroyed up to 1,000 buildings. Former Vice President Mike Pence says he's ready to take on his former boss in the first Republican presidential debate. Pence told The Hill while in Iowa he's been preparing for this debate my whole life, saying he spent his life in the conservative movement. It's still unclear if Pence will actually be sharing the stage with former President Trump, who has yet to say whether he'll participate in the debate in Milwaukee on August 23rd. The founder of collapsed cryptocurrency exchange FTX is being sent back to jail ahead of his fraud trial. Lisa Taylor reports.
A judge revoked Sam Bankman-Fried's bail Friday. The decision came after federal prosecutors accused Bankman-Fried of tampering with witnesses. The former crypto king had been confined to his parents' home in California on a $250 million bond. He was arrested in December and later pleaded not guilty to charges including wire fraud and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Bankman-Fried's trial is set to begin October 2nd. I'm Lisa Taylor.
Families are spending over $700 a month more on average than 2 years ago because of high inflation. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. A judge is denying a request by Alec Murdaugh to recant a confession in an insurance fraud case. Scott Kimbler reports.
Judge Bentley Price is not allowing the motion filed by Murdaugh's attorneys to recant his confession in defrauding an insurance company when a housekeeper died at his home, then pocketing the settlement. Satterfield confessed to the scam and getting a payout from Nautilus Insurance Company and not paying off the family of Gloria Satterfield. WSAV reports court records show he confessed to the crime earlier this year and even told his sons that he would be getting them a big insurance settlement. Instead of paying off the family, the money was put in an offshore account. Murdaugh is serving 2 life terms for the murder of his wife and one of his sons. He is also facing a long list of other charges.
The NYPD says using drones to monitor sharks at all New York City beaches should enhance response times. NYPD Inspector Frank DiGiacomo says drone operators are watching live feeds to notify the Parks Department so lifeguards can immediately ban swimming until the shark passes through. The FDNY and NYPD are currently flying the drones, but DiGiacomo says the goal is to have Parks personnel trained to fly their own drones by next summer. Drones will be monitoring all beaches 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to dusk. Public Safety Deputy Mayor Philip Banks is urging New Yorkers to avoid swimming when and where lifeguards are not on duty. The price at the pump is showing no signs of slowing.
We've seen gas prices on the rise as we've seen oil prices increase.
Josh Zuber with AAA says the OPEC nations like Saudi Arabia are cutting production, and with less oil on the market, that's pushing gas prices higher. Fuel costs have gone up almost $1 from the end of last year. The national average is $3.84 a gallon. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now, your chance at $1,000 and a trip to our 2023 iHeartRadio Music Festival. Yeah! Text the nationwide keyword WIN to 200-200. You'll get a confirmation text and info. Standard data and message rates apply in this nationwide contest. That's WIN to 200-200.
Get ready to win your way to our 2023 iHeartRadio Music Festival and $1,000.
You'll be there.
T-Mobile Arena here in Las Vegas.
September 22nd and 23rd.
Streaming live only on Hulu.
The iHeartRadio Music Festival.
Having the time of your life is more rewarding than ever when you visit any MGM Rewards destination nationwide. Dine, stay, play, and earn on all of it. Details at mgmrewards.com. Subject to earning and redemption limitations applicable to certain purchases and in certain states.
This report is sponsored by Napa Auto Parts. When your ride fires on all cylinders, so do you. That's why Napa is on a mission to keep you in motion. With nearly 6,000 Napa Auto Parts stores and over 17,000 Napa Auto Care Centers, the Napa network has everything you need to get up and go.
There are choices that can change your life.
Like the choice to start routine colorectal cancer screening at age 45.
It's one of the most common cancers for women and men, and it doesn't always have symptoms.
But there's good news. Routine screening can catch colorectal cancer early and even prevent it.
And there's even better news. You have screening options.
Make the choice to put your health first. Talk to your doctor about your screening options or visit cdc.gov/screenforlife for more information.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message data rates may apply. Reply stop, opt out.
Binges, blackouts, regret, shame, trying and failing to drink less or quit. Hi, I'm Jonathan, founder of Or Health. I know how scary drinking too much can be because I struggled with alcohol misuse for most of my adult life. But I also know that it is possible to drink less or quit. And medication can help. Naltrexone is a safe, effective medication that makes it easier to cut back or quit drinking, so you don't have to rely on willpower alone. I started Or Health to make access to naltrexone convenient and private to help people like me regain control over alcohol.
If you're ready to stop drinking or just drink less, text ADULT to 323232 to get a secure link to Or Health's private online assessment. Our licensed medical professionals will evaluate your assessment, and if medication is right for you, prescribe it online. We'll deliver your prescription right to your door. No doctor's office visits required. Text the word ADULT to 323232 to get started today. That's ADULT to 323232.
Only iHeartRadio gives you access to all of your favorite radio stations.
The Rod Ryan Show.
It's the Woody Show.
It's Elliot in the morning.
All of the once-in-a-lifetime events.
iHeartRadio Music Festival, yeah!
All of the best free curated playlists.
The best bands.
All of the great podcasts for every interest.
The stuff they don't want you to know.
All of the mind-blowing contests.
$20,000.
Awesome.
All of your favorite superstars.
This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters.
Best of all, it doesn't cost a thing. Download the absolutely free iHeartRadio app now.
Life's too short to just live in pain. Visit the Good Feet store today and see how we can help.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over here on the various social media pages. We're up on these days, a lot of comments coming in on a lot of different things here and a lot of different topics here. A lot of people joining in, adding their 2 cents, but be it Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Talk El Paso, or Andrew J. Polk on each of those. And of course, primarily over on the Facebook page, we do have those. We do have dropping those likes and reacts. RJ, Ricardo Figueroa, Ida Beza Gardner, Edgar Ortiz, James Homestead, of course, Marky Mendingo, James Radcliffe, Jim McCravey, Robbie Flores, and Monica Cervantes. If you appreciate the ability, however interesting it might get sometimes, to talk about the things going on affecting us here in the borderland, and of course on Fridays beyond, drop us those likes, those reacts, give us that share, tell a friend, etc. Do whatever works for you, really. But keep the conversation going as much as you can, even if it's not on air. Hey, talking about it is not just that was fun, let's go do something and never think about this again. No, that's not what we are, not like we do today. And some idea of having bingo played there, and other things coming up, including James Ratcliffe asking or talking about on another note, University of Texas system is only $6.7 billion less than the $49.4 billion endowment that Harvard has, yet the university still push for higher tuition to attend. I mean, it's a system versus the one university, I guess I would say. And I also want to say that, okay, in the whole, not directly what you were talking about, but there's been some interesting analysis about with the whole legacy admissions is its own thing, but of the affirmative action part of admissions, that Texas basically had to kind of deal with that in its own right. That's why, as much as those Supreme Court cases and related issues coming down, there's only a couple of institutions, primarily private, I want to say, that were affected by it, because Texas switched to that, what was it, the top 10 admission system in, I want to say the late 90s, early 2000s. It was definitely in place by the time I was graduating high school. Franklin High School in 2007. Go Cougars to date myself. But it was one of the reasons I strongly considered going to UT Austin as one of my choices, but ended up choosing elsewhere because of mostly for, frankly, financial aid, among other things. But so, I mean, it's one versus a whole system. And I do think that there have been implications about that whole top 10 immediate admissions, guaranteed admissions. And that's top 10%, not just the top 10 of every class. That would be significantly less unless you're one of those real tiny schools, in which case, I guess sometimes it could be all of them. In any case, top 10% get automatic admission. I think that has had some implications there for the increased tuition. I do have to be honest with you, but a whole lot more of other things going on, including a further discussion about patients. Like, hey, I have a good time doing this here, talking about the issues. I mean, I managed to get paid to do it. And sure, there's some people that are not going to agree with me. And if I had an issue with that, I would have stopped doing this a long time ago. But I'm here for the discussion, so let's dive right back into it and get back to those phone lines, because, of course, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. And full up at the moment, but we'll squeeze in all the calls we can throughout this second hour of the program. Well into it, but let's get right into it. Andrew on the west side is on the line with us here right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much. And go Panthers, Austin Panthers, class of 1979.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, there's a lot of like Panther, Cougar, mountain lion based mascots around town, if you want to be honest. But yes, to them as well. Yeah, that's where my father graduated from. Yeah, similar time frame.
Great. Wanted to respond to Comrade Raul.
Okay.
Yes. Well, if Bidenomics is working so well, okay, why are gas prices so high? Yes, I know that OPEC has cut production, but then again, we in the United States cut our domestic production.
Yes, and of course, there's been, I want to say it wasn't talked about like in that news update immediately adjacent to it, but there have been certain other actions, such as, I'm not going to say I was going to be in favor of anywhere drilling like in or around the Grand Canyon, but there has been similar type of efforts and at least pushes and continue pushes even on the administration to further more of a like restriction of new drilling, stuff like that. So, sure, there's a lot to be put on OPEC, absolutely, and in fact, the way they've taken differences on this, some of the lowest prices we saw, not in the last administration, but in the previous one or the previous one to that, was because they decided, okay, there's basically the U.S. has gotten way too much market share. If we want to get that back, not necessarily on a dollar per dollar basis, but of a people buying more us than they are theirs, particularly as the hydraulic fracturing, also known as fracking revolution, came along and was making that a lot more available. They were feeling threatened by it. And now they're like, you know what? Sure. Yeah, you produce all you want, make the market strong, and we're just going to sell the little bit. It's almost more, OPEC is a cartel to begin with, but more like diamond cartel logic. Like, hey, y'all keep the prices high and we'll just keep making as much damn money as we want.
Interesting. Also, other things are going up. You can talk about
sure.
The inflation rate being low, but that don't feed the bulldog when your pocketbook is feeling it. Insurance rates are up, food prices are up, taxes are up, but Biden economics is working, and the inflation rate is down.
I mean, okay, yeah, the old, the CPI, Consumer Price Index, and the market basket of goods has been showing, some fluctuation, usually in a arguably favorable way, particularly for the administration. But again, just looking at, as we were talking about this since the beginning of the show here, some of those approval ratings, I'm not sure that the concept is really translating. Part of the reason, again, I do believe that this whole tour is going on right now with parts of the administration visiting our region, certainly, but many parts of the country as well.
Well, like I said, Andrew, that don't feed the bulldog when you're feeling it in your pocketbook.
Yeah,
but
certainly.
At the top of the hour, NBC said, what was it? People are paying more, $700 a month more.
Yeah, that sounds about right. We were dealing with the calls in the break there, so I don't always catch all of the news updates. But prices, as much as inflation might be low, that still means that prices have continued to rise. And particularly with the big jumps we saw in previous months and quarters, etc. And as much as there's agreement and disagreement in a lot of ways here, I'll say so, certainly agree with something that Raul said yesterday about how there's never going to be deflation. That you want to talk about, as much as there are a lot of scary phrases, stagflation, recession, depression. Actually, deflation is one of those hair on fire emergencies that would be ringing all the alarm bells, at least from the economic folks, about, oh, this is super bad. And so we haven't seen that. And sure, I'm not saying that the opposite side of inflation or hyperinflation is great. It would definitely gender a completely different response.
True. Oh, and this may be a shock to Frankie, and big disappointment. But hey, reading on the internet, beer has gone up 6% during 2023. So that's not good.
All of the things going on here, I'll say that I often look with a very critical eye anytime, any of the big box stores or the major grocery sections of any other thing otherwise, to see what's not in stock right then. Sure, something may be, that truck hasn't come in yet, but we're still seeing those, supply side shocks and effects of, well, something got disrupted here because we're not, the reverberations of that in this just-in-time supplies era is, it's a major issue, and still seeing those, it's still definitely affecting, and seeing again those shocks happening with that whole market basket of goods.
Right. Well, one last thing. Hey, Marco, go for it. Go run for mayor. I'll vote for you. Anyway, Andrew, have a good Friday, and I turn the mic back over to you.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you very much for the point in the call. You have a good one there as well.
Likewise.
All right, and with that, I think we get one more call on the line, actually, before taking that next break right now. Close enough, but I think we'll go for it. So we do have Frankie and Missy on the line with us here right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us. Frankie, you there?
Yeah. Hey,
there we are.
Oh boy, Friday, yippee-yay, right out of the box. Sad circumstance here. Somebody in my family left my beer cooler open, and I'm drinking 80-degree beer.
Oh, no.
I don't drink it because that's the way it is. I just wanted to share with them. None of them are going to care about that. But anyway, let me say this.
Mm-hmm.
We here in our country are in serious doo-doo, right? We seem to be running toward the precipice of disaster. Now, there was some famous person so many years ago, maybe it was me, I don't know. But anyway, said, when you encounter problems with democracy, the solution is more democracy. And I agree with that. Okay? Now, you've got this guy, the Donnie Dotard doofus, which is a horrible individual in any stretch of the imagination for any normal thinking person. He probably will win the primary and become the nominee. And Lord help us, the non-existent God of Abraham, that this guy becomes president again. We are in deep doo-doo. Now, that's my opening comment.
Get your perspective and a dislike for that particular candidate. He is polling ahead, and whatever you think about it, I will say that he has very well primed his particular base, which is not necessarily the Republican base overall, though they certainly have gotten at the very least closer than they used to have been, as of the donation numbers that come out of this. And well, okay, as much as Ron DeSantis's campaign is, I'm not going to call it cratering just yet, but it's definitely on the downward spiral that comes right before it. One thing that he has said that has also been put up about this idea that the focus of the 2024 election is going to be key, because if it's a referendum basically on the former president, yeah, it might end up being not in favorable for him. If it ends up being a referendum on Biden and his policies, there would be the win. So we'll see. I mean, the former president certainly is a known egoist, and known person that is very much focused on him and what he's doing and what he's got going on. And so I don't expect any necessarily changes from this. I mean, he was a former reality show host, for crying out loud. If you're expecting ego not to be involved in there, I really don't know what to tell you. But and as much as we'll see how these court cases work out, that has certainly hardened some opinions for some in some ways, but strengthened the belief in him from others. So I'm not going to call it exactly the same status quo, but I do think that maybe, like, again, some of those lines may be hardening even.
Well, from my perspective, 82 years on this planet, and the way we run our country, it's a country governed by the people, right? You elect whom you want to govern the country. We know that. That's the way this thing was set up. But back in 2020, 8 million people rejected the Donnie Dotard doofus because probably for the most part, it was a nut job. Now, almost everybody normally, when it comes up to election time, votes their pocketbook. Well, I'm not making this. You're causing gas prices and eggs and blood, butter, and whatever the heck it is. But some people need to go beyond that thought process and recognize that things happen in a democracy, but you've got to be able to look at the situation on a long-term thing and say, okay, we got these problems, but if you're going to wreck democracy because of some individual nut job thought process, that's it for us. We're done. We're cooked. That's my point.
I'll agree with you that, voting your personal interest is certainly an important one, though I'll say that as much as there are some who have certainly said that they like the policies or had issue with the policies, there are definitely some who come down to the idea of, well, the other people hate him, therefore. And I'll just say this about that line of logic. Like, if that's what gets you your jollies off, whatever. I really don't have anything to say to you on that. But if you're also doing it against your own interests, as being like, yeah, this will hurt me too, I'm just going to say you can get your jollies other ways. I'll just put it that way. So we'll, of course, be keeping an eye on this lead up to the 2024 election. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, he's still the front runner at the moment, and I don't see any immediate reason that that's going to change unless there's some other huge things, and not even just within current news, but in the way that even the base works out to that point.
No, and I hear what you're saying. You're 100% right on that. And it's a scary proposition, Andrew, and everybody else out there in the Southwest Puerto Rico. Now, most El Pasoans, I would think 90% El Pasoans are normal-thinking individuals, right? I don't think they voted for the Stud Cancun Clubs guy, probably didn't even vote for the Donnie Dotard. Normal El Pasoans, they're very smart people. But the rest of the state and everybody else, and let me just say this one thing, and I mentioned this before, right? I mean, the women of the United States. By the way, let me tell you that. I want more El Paso women to chime in, other than Barbara, and she's in Cloudcroft now, but chime in on what your thought process is relative, specifically, if you will, the whole abortion issue, which started in Texas with this nonsense that your Governor Abbott Les Costello started, and then all went over the box. There's all these other states that are shooting it down, right? So I want to hear more El Paso women chiming in. And I don't care who you are. Chime in. I don't care if you're Republican, Independent. Come in, call in. I want to hear what you got to say. And that's my final point.
All right, fair enough. I'll disagree with you on the finer point of it. Starting in Texas, I would say some of the other challenges, what were the real inciting of that Supreme Court decision. But there's a lot of more other things going on with it. I'll agree with you there. So do appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Okay, have a great weekend.
All right, you too. And with that, we do have to take that next break right now. So coming out of this break, we do have more calls, more comments, more of everything on the line here. So We'll certainly get back to those here, but got to take that break right now. Again, that number, if you want to get on the line, is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at Chelsea, an earlier crash on the on-ramp is cleared. All lanes are back open, but there's still delays back to Geronimo. A minor crash on eastbound Border Highway at the 54 Patriot with vehicles resting in the Gore lane. I-10 westbound between Mesa and Trans Mountain, it's stop and go with 12-minute delays and 8-minute delays. I-10 eastbound Vinton down to Arcraft. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by America's Best Contacts and Eyeglasses. It's a lesson in back-to-school savings. America's Best offers a comprehensive eye exam and 2 pairs of glasses from just $79.95. Don't wait. Book an exam today at americasbest.com. In certain states, eye exams provided by independent practices. See store for details.
Bachelor Happy Hour, the one and only official Bachelor Nation podcast, is back. Go behind the scenes with your hosts, Bachelor in Paradise Season 7 newlyweds, Joe Amabile and Serena Pitt, for real stories about what happens in Bachelor Mansion.
Here on Bachelor Happy Hour, we'll be putting all the guys in the hot seat. We'll have exclusive interviews. We'll be the first to talk to the men. We're going to bring the drama into the house and leave probably brokenhearted.
Listen to Bachelor Happy Hour on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Burt Ward, Robin from TV's Batman, inviting you to feed your dog natural, non-GMO, Gentle Giants dog and puppy food. Dogs eating Gentle Giants and following our special feeding and care program are living as long as 27 healthy, active years with a wonderful quality of life. Holy wow, 27 years! Think of all the extra years you could enjoy with your dog at Target, H-E-B, and stores near you. Try Gentle Giant's cat and kitten food, too.
This your captain. Better buckle your seatbelts for this one. I saw my passport expired, so I went to Staples, got a passport photo lickety-split. While I was there, I grabbed some tiny travel soap and shampoo. I should have got some for my co-pilot. Just kidding, Brad.
Staples has everything for travel. 10-minute passport photos, luggage, headphones, even personal travel items. And now at Staples, get $10 off your purchase of $30 or more when you buy a travel service. Staples, your first stop to nonstop travel. Ends 9/16. In-store only. Exclusions apply.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Kids dream big. Protect your child's dreams by keeping them healthy. If your son or daughter is age 11 or 12, the American Cancer Society recommends giving them the HPV vaccine to help prevent HPV cancers later. Learn more at cancer.org/dreambig.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, whatever way works best for you, really. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch.tv over on our social, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk, or, of course, on air, online, and live streaming through the Free and Live iHeartRadio app. Again, good reason to download that, where you do occasionally send out updates on what we got coming up for you on the shows here. So, of course, if you want that kind of thing, or just be able to get at us wherever you are, as long as you got signal, Facebook, the social apps, of course, work as well, but certainly the iHeartRadio app on your smart device of choice here. One thing coming in to just within basically since the last break, interesting update from the Texas Tribune here, their recent article titled Texas House Committee Report Outlines Possible Path Forward for School Vouchers. So haven't dug into that one just yet, but let's just say that it seems like it's going to be a topic coming up for next week, and other comments coming in over on our social media as well, certainly including questions about Barbara, as was brought up there. So not trying to talk out of turn. She can certainly speak for herself when she chooses to. I do believe she's at very least traveling outside of the area, I think is what she said, and may or may not have relocated, but I'll leave that question to her. Other question coming in, Wanda Von Kant asking, why do so few women call into this show? I don't know. I mean, like I've said, the major difference between who gets through on the line, who doesn't, ends up being tenacity. But I'll just say this, the demographics of what we understand of who listens to the station is pretty well even. It skews a little bit more men, but like not overwhelmingly so, like not even a 60-40 kind of thing to my understanding. So I don't know. Maybe it's that people who are wanting to, I don't know, people who want to talk more. I don't know. I don't know what to chalk it up to, but I do know eventually we need more phone lines, and maybe that'll deal with a lot of these issues. But in any case, other comments coming, including Robert Gable saying, you're saying, Frankie, that perhaps 90% of El Pasoans were voting ignorantly. I'm going to say that I would love it if 90% of El Pasoans were voting, maybe not ignorantly, but I think the problem is that for the most part, 90% plus aren't voting, and I'll chalk that up as one of the issues. But let's dive into those phone lines again here right now. We do have Jerry in the Northeast. Okay, never mind, we just lost Jerry in the Northeast, but okay, we do have Stephen on the East Side here with us right now. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey there, what's on your mind?
So yeah, I want to agree with Frankie a little bit on the abortion issue. I think it is something that if Republicans go a little bit too far and they don't allow for protections of the mother if their pregnancy is threatening her life, complications, those kinds of things. If they go too far, I think they are going to pay at the ballot box. I actually agree with Frankie on that.
Okay.
When it comes to the inflation question, and you made a great point, and a lot of people need to understand this, is just because the inflation rate is down doesn't mean prices went down.
Nope.
After COVID and the shutdowns, the lockdowns, everything went up, and the government spent a lot of money. They printed a lot of money. And so the moment you do that, you're going to have prices rise, and they're going to stay up. And the inflation rate might go back down, but they had to really crank up the interest rates on everybody. So, if you want to buy a house, you want to get a loan, those kinds of things, they really had to crank those up really high in order to achieve a lower inflation rate. So there's always a price to pay. And there were a lot of people, Raul was saying, a lot of people were scared, and a lot of people didn't know how COVID was going to affect children. This and that. Yeah, we actually did know that, because when we watched what happened in Italy, it became very clear that the people who were affected by COVID-19 were the elderly and people with comorbidities, high blood pressure, sugar, diabetes, obesity, those kinds of things. So it was very clear who was going to be most affected. And there were a lot of people out there, and myself included, and the Great Barrington Declaration, and a lot of people, very smart people who knew a lot about public policy and health, were saying, hey, we don't really need to shut down everything. We don't really need to lock everyone up. What we need to do is protect the people who are high risk and try to isolate them and make sure that they are safe and put apart. But you also have to remember, the vaccines were effective, but they were effective for those high-risk people. There were people who were low risk who really saw no benefit to the vaccine. In fact, I would argue that if you got COVID and you were young and healthy and you had maybe a mild cold from COVID, and then they offered the vaccine, you were probably better off not getting the vaccine afterwards, because the version of COVID that you got was a more recent variant, and the vaccine was based on something that was no longer existing in transmission. So there was young, healthy people who didn't really need it after they'd already gotten COVID the first time. So, that was the debate, but everyone wanted to shut things down. And even after the vaccines were available, let's say you had school teachers who were vaccinated and they were older, and they still refused to go back to school. We were pushing for it really, really hard. The kids need to go back to school. The kids need to go back in sports. We've got too much obesity. We've got problems with, kids being stuck at home and they're being fed properly. And there was a lot of problems with that. And a lot of us were out there fighting, and no one wanted to listen to the truth about who was at risk and who wasn't even after the vaccines were available.
What I'll say is that just on the point about, getting it and maybe not getting the vaccine on it. I mean, I always will encourage people to talk with their trusted medical professional when it comes to any of these things. But I'll say of some people that I knew that got COVID, they seemed to then have a greater, again, completely anecdotal evidence, but seem to be therefore more likely to get it again. Like the people I know who got it once tended to get it 2, 3, or at least in one case I know 4 times. So I'm not going to say that it's definitely not the way I ended up going about it in my own choice. But we decided for our family, we had a lot of people at risk. So that's the reason we made the choice that we did when it came to, again, this very important medical decision. So I'm not saying that's maybe the best way that I would have gone about it, even if that wasn't the situation for me. But particularly when it comes down to the larger impact, some of the things that we talked about on air more specifically and particularly locally about, I mean, there was that whole fight technically between, the county and the state on what could or couldn't happen, particularly since the legislature wasn't in place and wasn't able to make decisions at that point, since it wasn't one of those, odd number of years when it's called into, and the governor super didn't end up calling them, which is part of the reason I think that he reaped the whirlwind from the lightning he sowed and the decision that he made, and the whole, King Abbott comments came about. But I mean, yeah, the impacts that we saw in the business community and other things like that were not trivial in any case. I mean, I know a lot of people saying, well, we need to do whatever we can, but also kind of the sometimes arbitrary nature of what is or isn't considered essential was, I'm not going to call it exactly a picking winners and losers kind of moment, but it got pretty close. It did feel like sometimes.
Well, I'll agree with your anecdotal evidence that the people who got COVID tend to get it again and again, but the people I know also were vaccinated. Those same people who got COVID over and over were also vaccinated. So I'm not sure how much that benefited them. But anyways, yeah. So the other topic I wanted to bring up, because Frankie brought it up, is like, how could people possibly vote for Donald Trump? He's a danger to the democracy. But you have to understand that the people who support Trump looked at the election where Trump won the first time around, and they launched this. They had been spying on his campaign. There were people in the State Department, people in the FBI, people in these different things who spied on his campaign. They had this document that they came up with, the Steele dossier, which were there was supposedly Russian collusion. They did the special counselor, and Mueller's special counsel, they knew very early on that the Steele dossier was bogus, and it was not true. That we had the memos, we had the emails. They know that it wasn't true, yet they persisted in that investigation for years to get all the way past the midterms elections, and so that was basically meant to hobble Donald Trump's candidacy, his presidency.
Sure.
So when you've got these actors within the government who are undermining the current president, is that not dangerous for democracy? And wouldn't you, if you were Donald Trump, be suspicious of the activities of the people in the government and what they're willing to do and not do in order to undermine your reelection? So I think there's a lot of people, and I think they have a lot of reason to be suspicious of the government. And remember, there was a lot of damning information coming about President Biden, well, now President Biden, then candidate Biden, getting bribes and things through his son and through his brother that was going to come out before the election. And that would have hurt Joe Biden significantly. And a lot of these people who were part of the government, part of intelligence agencies, came out and said, oh, no, this is Russian disinformation. And they even prevented that story from being shared on social media. And the government was pressuring the social media sites not to allow that information to get out about Joe Biden. And so, is that election interference by our own federal government? That's very dangerous for democracy. So people are right to be very suspicious about our federal government. Now, when it comes to election fraud, that's a very different story. It's very difficult because that was the first time under the guise of COVID that they were able to do all these mail-in ballots. And a lot of these states changed their rules to become very, very lax when it comes to the security of those mail-in ballots. And so, when Donald Trump calls Georgia and says, hey, you guys need to find these votes, it's because you're suspicious about some chicanery with the mail-in ballots and potentially people doing some tricks with the mail-in ballots. Now, whether he's right or wrong about that is a different story. But this claim that he knew that everything was on the up and about the election, that's very difficult to prove. And if you go out throughout history, like I said, I've seen a lot of elections, and I've seen a lot of Democrats throughout the years doing the same thing, and they're doing the same thing. So, oh, well, you need to find these votes, or you need to disqualify these votes who were for the other candidate because the hanging Chad was wrong, with Bush, or, trying to disqualify votes for the other candidate. That's what they do in these legal fights. Like, no, these votes don't count because you didn't verify this, and these votes are my votes and they count, and they argue that way. So, the production of the January 6th committee and the hearings in Congress were very much a public campaign to try to convince the American people of wrongdoing by Donald Trump. And like you said, it's like, well, they could have just done a special counsel from the get-go. They could have subpoenaed and get these testimonies by doing investigation through the courts and everything in the first place. But that's not what they wanted. They wanted to try to convince as many people in the public. They needed public support to go after Biden's political opponent before they could try to come up with some new legal theory in order to condemn Donald Trump. So I have one last thing to say.
Sure.
It has something to do unrelated with our country. It's actually down in South America.
Okay.
There was an assassination of the president who was running in Ecuador. And so people are aware of what's going on down there. A long time ago, Venezuela converted to a socialist country, and they've done very, very poorly. And we had hopes that the neighbors around there would realize that's a bad way to go. But recently, Colombia had their own election, and basically, this guy was an ex-guerrillero. He was with the cartels, and they would kidnap people and kill people. It was awful. And, Colombia had kind of like this guerrilla war for all these years. But recently, one of those guys got elected president, and he's currently the president of Colombia. A lot of people got out of there when they saw that because they're like, oh, no, Colombia didn't learn the lessons of Venezuela, and they're going the same direction. And then now in Ecuador, they assassinated the conservative candidate.
Yeah, Fernando Villavicencio. Sorry, I actually heard it said out line, but Villavicencio. So yeah, not a great situation down there, and I've been paying a little bit of attention to that, but the instability and things going down there is not great and doesn't bode well for that or any of these future processes. Or, continued instability there, of course, has had impacts, not even just internationally, but also in our area, as, of course, Venezuela has been pointed as one of the major points of origin of the current patterns of what we're seeing people arrive in our area south of the border. So, that is another reason to be concerned about and worried about what might be happening future here. But to your main point there about particularly, Donald Trump and his whole base, frankly, I think that as much as Stephen thought, or not you, Stephen, but Eric, but necessary to refute the lies and those kind of aspects of it here. And again, it's interesting to note what the actual then charges came out as were not about his specific statements, but some of the actions, the elector slates, those kind of things are some of the more impactful parts for my money from that. But here's the thing that keeps being misunderstood about Donald Trump. He had lost the election at that point, 2020, but the continuation on of it, and again, the implications that I do think were there for the midterm election. But the thing about is trying to put in the public sphere of hey, this guy is bad, you shouldn't like him, or anything along those lines. Anything about saying that this was, that he is, anything really about the former president has not worked out, I think, the way it was intended to, of destroying his political chances. Because, well, usually that would work. Again, people's entire political careers over decades, much less hey, I think I want to run for president, and it happening that day or in that same year, or like it kind of happened with Donald Trump. We've had people who have been career politicians have their careers destroyed by a single ad about them. Again, Michael Dukakis is always going to come to mind for me, but there are plenty of other examples of similar types of things. And that keeps not working in that same vein, in that same way, for the former president and his political base, because it keeps being a key misunderstanding of how that exists completely outside of these traditional power structures, the traditional way of, hey, I want to get power, let me gather people around him. It started the other way. There were essentially already, all the times that the personage of Donald Trump came up before 2016 was in many different ways, and he had his own following in his own way, and he brought that to the political process as opposed to hoping to find it through the political process. So by expecting any of these things on their own to work is a continual misunderstanding and a probably a pretty serious one in any of these tactics being thought to. Again, I understand there are people out there that just want the former president to go away and not be in public life ever again. But if they truly want to achieve that, trying to do it, well, it didn't work. I mean, what's the definition of insanity? Trying the same thing over and over again. If that's truly your goal, I'm just saying that just doing the pillaring in the public sphere is proven to be ineffectual at best and arguably probably never going to work unless something very different ends up being tried.
Yeah, and Donald Trump is still seen as anti-establishment, anti-deep state. A lot of people like that. It really infuriates people like Eric and Raul that, you know, people aren't up in arms about January 6th. I think that people see it a different way. I always looked at the people who went in there as kind of useful idiots. And, you know, they weren't going to actually stop any democratic processes. They delayed it a day. It was still going to happen. And, you know, people look at it, a lot of the Trump supporters look at it as a riot. But furthermore than that, there's still a lot of questions about how many FBI informants, FBI agents were actually involved in the crowd. The FBI refuses to answer that question in front of Congress. And I don't know if you saw recently, but the chief of Capitol Police, when it happened, has recently been going out there saying, you know what, I actually get the sense that the people at the Capitol, Nancy Pelosi or whoever could have stopped the riots, actually wanted this to happen. And he was the chief of police, and he's like, well, he called for help. We wanted help, and they actually, the people who could have helped us, and these were people in charge, establishment people, Democrats. They didn't get the help over there when he wanted it, and so he now appears to be corroborating kind of what Trump people have been saying, is that, like, yeah, they wanted January 6th to happen, and they wanted to use it politically to hurt Donald Trump. And a lot of federal agents were involved, inciting, maybe, or at the very least not helping to stop it.
Again, we'll see what comes out of the current now actual court proceedings here that are still not really along the lines of January. I mean, it's being called January 6th trial, but it's everything more surrounding it than it is the day itself, I would have to say here. But we'll have to tell you, we got to take that next break right now. So I do appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Have a good weekend.
All right, you too as well. And so with that, taking that break, coming back, squeezing in the calls we can before the end of the show. So if you're on the line, stay there. If you want to call in at least one more time here, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. Students and staff at Montwood High School were evacuated from the school today after a bomb threat was made against the high school. That's according to officials with the Socorro School District. School officials say students were released early due to the bomb threat. Fire officials said 2 students were taken to the hospital with minor injuries, which were heat-related. 7 others were checked out at the school. The city of El Paso has approved a new budget for the next fiscal year, and the funding for the Mexican-American Cultural Center and the penguin exhibit at the zoo were supposed to be completed this year, but both projects were included in the budget again. In the 2022 budget, the city said that the Mexican-American Cultural Center downtown and the Penguin Exhibit Center was scheduled to open this year, but a spokesperson for the city said both projects are still under construction. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
A crash on eastbound Border Highway at the 54 Patriot is not causing any delays. It's off to the right. I-10 eastbound at Porfirio Diaz, the exit ramp is blocked with police activity. I-10 westbound slow, Mesa to Trans Mountain, it's stop and go with 13-minute delays. Same on the eastbound side of I-10 from Vinton down to Artcraft, it's a 15-minute delay. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Good news just in time for the weekend. A pattern change means temperatures not as hot. hot. We're looking at 97 for your Saturday with a 20% chance of showers and thunderstorms. A little breezy at times and then a little gustier near any showers or storms. Partly cloudy for your Sunday, a little hotter, high around 99 with a 30% chance of thunderstorms on Sunday. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Lowe's knows how to save pros time and money. Right now, save 10% on select concrete mix when you buy one pallet or more. Lowe's knows pros. Discount reflected in contractor's pack pricing and must purchase one pallet or more of same item to be eligible.
Attention business owners. Was your company impacted during COVID? If you had W-2 employees during 2020 and 2021, you may be entitled for up to $26,000 per employee through the Employee Retention Credit Program. This is not alone. The IRS paid back billions already. We've helped thousands of businesses just like yours. So let us help you. At ERC Business Solutions, we make it simple. We do it all for you, so you won't have to worry about the complex application process. There's absolutely no risk. If you don't get paid, we don't get paid. Most businesses do qualify, even those with no decline in revenues or those that already got PPP. Discover how much you can claim. There's no cost or obligation. Call now, 800-200-2250. That's 800-200-2250. Get up to $26,000 per employee. Call 800-200-2250. 800-200-2250.
Protection for all, peace of mind for you. For over 40 years, Mazer Security Alarms has proudly served El Paso with superior service and superior protection. You can afford the best. For your free quote or to upgrade your existing system, call Mazer Security Alarms at 915-590-0033.
The Dell Technologies Back to School event is on. With every eligible purchase, Dell will donate to UNICEF to help connect schools to the internet. Accidental damage protection included. Get deals on top tech powered by the latest Intel Core processors. Save now at Dell.com/deals.
This report is sponsored by Dell Technologies.
Children who grow up in poverty are part of a destructive cycle. At Child Fund International, we find this unacceptable. In 25 countries, we are vigorously fighting poverty and improving the lives of children and their families. Learn more at childfund.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Excuse me what calls we can here for the last bit of the show, getting right up at the end of it here. I've been not good with dealing with the breaks today, but Free for All Friday, hey, I guess it's just in the spirit of it. So let's just jump right back in, get to the last comments and calls that we can, including some other discussions about variability and possibilities with around the next election, but we'll see what happens with that. But in the meantime here, let's just jump right in back on the calls. We do have Mike in the Northeast on the line with us here right now. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. Thanks for taking my call. Just, the last caller, I think his name was Steve. He went on and on and on about with his talking about democracy and going on and on about his epidemiology degree from the Joe Rogan Experience. But I say we take a vote since we live in democracy. Let's take a vote that Steve's calls can only go 5 minutes. He is not a show contributor. He is a caller. But anyway, I wanted to get to the point about the economy. Everybody seems to be talking about today, and it's been a theme all over today. And people need to realize, like Jerry, the disposable income that you have and the money that you have to buy a house, a car, to fill your car up with gas, etc., has nothing to do with the economy. It has to do with the wage gap that has started in the 1950s and has continued based on the exact policies that Jerry votes for every election. Increases the CEO pay and decreases the everyday worker pay. Back in the 50s, you could buy a house, for $6,000, and due to the continuous inflation and these policies, it's just we have more billionaires and more millionaires than we've ever had. Yet the wealth gap continues to grow based on those policies. And again, Steve was talking about a democracy. It's bad for democracy. If we truly lived in a democracy, Steve, Donald Trump would have never been elected, because a democracy is majority rules. We live in a constitutional republic, which means people like me have to deal with the Electoral College and have people like Trump and the last several Republican presidents get in based on that we're not a democracy. So I don't go on and on about democracy. I just can't believe it. It's how much people wage and go on about the economy. Economy stalled. Economy is bad because I can't put gas in my car. But you continue to vote for those policies unless you make over $500,000 a year. You're one of us, buddy. You're one of us. You're one of us who's struggling. So stop voting for policies that help the CEO. That's basically all I got. Other than I kind of do miss Barbara because I don't have to listen to Fox all day, because Barbara, the Fox News parrot, she parrots all of their talking points, and we get to hear them. So I don't have to listen to all those guys go on Fox News. I'm interested to hear what you say about the economy, Andrew. And I'll take your comments off there.
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there then. I'll just say this, that, I mean, yeah, what's the phrase I think of, that a recession is when your neighbor loses their job and a depression is when you lose yours. And I mean, there's more that goes into it than that, but I mean, public perception is very important with it. And okay, on the economy, I would say that, I mean, certainly there's a lot of indicators that have shown economic recovery, but I've continued to call the circumstances more weird than everything, because sure, their consumer spending was staying strong, corporate profits have stayed strong, but it hasn't exactly been that's solely a good thing now, has it? It's been a lot of, yeah, but things cost more, so we have to spend more, or the household debt that has also gone on. So I mean, I think that a lot of people may recognize that, hey, markets are doing well, but markets were always kind of a shorthand for, well, particularly how, top tax brackets are doing, because, I mean, there's what's another phrase that comes to mind is that the economy doing well is when, markets going up means your boss buys a new car, or, the company president buys a new car. Markets going down means that you lose your job. So whether or not that's a good way of mixing and measuring the actual economy and how it works for everyone, I think there's a lot of people out there that do feel that this economy, however it's doing, may not be working as well for them, and that price is increasing, that, I mean, if they're working on the same job and doing the same things and having the same income come into them, that they're feeling increasingly squeezed. So I get what you're saying about there being that, it's not the real indicators of it, but I mean, purchasing power in housing is the most egregious example I can think of. I'm wondering, I mean, I'm feeling very increasingly lucky that we were able to get into the house that we are in now, and wondering if that will basically ever happen again. But that's so much to say that we'll keep our eye on this and all the other things. And Mondo Moncada putting it, I guess, decently succinctly about numerous economic conundrums. And I think someone that can come up with the solutions to all of them, will win several Nobel Prizes, but also, well, maybe never actually end up existing. Honestly, we're going to have to leave it there for today, because we are just about out of time here for the show. If we weren't able to get to your call, I do apologize, but of course, we'll be up next week, as we are every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., but we are just super out of time here for this show for today. So we've covered a lot of ground, maybe not as much as I would have liked to, and if I do have a foible, it's certainly, if someone actually wants to have a conversation, very willing to get into it and discuss those issues. But we'll have to leave it there for today. I do want to thank everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. We got a lot more that we're working on for you next week as well. Just want to say that, including some introductions to some of the new on-air faces with our news partners at KFOX 14, and a whole lot more with that. Coming up tomorrow on the El Paso History Radio Show, the upcoming edition of the John Wesley Hardin Secret Society, and the event's going to be happening with the Concordia Heritage Association and their upcoming visit and events continuing on as well, and the improvements going on at Concordia Cemetery. So there's a whole lot more going on there, and that we'll talk about next week and over the weekend, but want to have to leave it there for today. I want to thank everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. We'll do it again as we do every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. So until then, until next time, stay safe out there, look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you all next week. Tune in to the History Radio Show, 10 to noon tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Eastbound on Trans Mountain at the Gateway North, there's an accident that's blocking the left lane with minor delays. I-10 eastbound as you get into downtown, the Porfirio Diaz exit ramp is blocked by police activity. Gateway South at Dyer, there's a disabled vehicle stopped in the right lane. And Kansas south of Paisano downtown at 4th Avenue, watch for an accident. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Lowe's knows how to save pros time and money. Right now, save 10% on select concrete mix when you buy one pallet or more. Lowe's knows pros. Discount reflected in contractor's pack pricing and must purchase one pallet or more of same item to be eligible.
In today's Marketers Report, Kate Cronin, Chief Brand Officer of Moderna, weighs in on the speed of audio production.
In this day and age, and particularly at Moderna, where we have new information coming out on a regular basis, being able to feed that information to the audio format makes being nimble and pivoting easy, and that's what I really like about it.
As the #1 audio company, iHeartMedia gives marketers access to the audiences, influencers, insights, and data you need to grow. If you're a marketer, go to iHeartResults.com.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
We're going abroad for the first time in years, to Spain. So we started using Babbel.
And started learning Spanish fast.
With Babbel, you can start having conversations in another language in just 3 weeks.
¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas?
When you learn a language, you want to actually use it. Babbel is designed with that goal in mind.
In just 3 weeks, we're starting to have conversations in Spanish. Gracias, Babbel.
Babbel, language